Trump thought it would be an easy win, just an IQ test against Obama on live national TV. But barely half a minute later, the room fell silent, and for the first time, the look on Trump's face said everything that it began with a moment no one expected. A sunny afternoon in Washington, cameras flashing, reporters shouting, and President Trump standing in the Rose Garden with that unmistakable grin that signaled he was about to say something bold, except this time, it wasn't about policy or the economy or the media. It was about Barack Obama, let's be honest, Trump said, pointing toward the crowd of journalists. Everyone talks about how smart Obama is. But I'd love to see him take an IQ test with me. I'd win easily, easily. A few reporters laughed, assuming it was just another offhand Trump joke. But Trump didn't laugh. He paused, soaking in the cameras. Confidence radiated from his posture, the satisfaction clear in his tone. No one in history, he added, has a higher IQ than me. Nobody. The crowd froze for a moment, then burst into questions. Mr. President, are you serious? One shouted. Trump turned toward the voice. Dead serious. Let's do it. Tell Obama I'll even let him pick the test. Within minutes, the clip was everywhere. News networks replayed it on loop. Twitter exploded. Hashtags like IQ Test Challenge and Trump versus Obama started trending before Trump even stepped away from the podium. His communications team looked half amused, half nervous, unsure whether this was genius or a looming disaster. Trump loved it. He thrived on the attention. He told his aides it was classic showmanship. He leaned into it, retweeting fan edits of himself posing over a photoshopped test paper labeled "Genius." To him, it was fun, good TV, and for the next few hours, the world waited for Obama's response. Cable hosts dissected every word. Late-night comedians jumped in. The internet had turned the Rose Garden moment into a full-blown global spectacle. But no one knew whether Obama would even acknowledge it. Inside the White House, some of Trump's advisors felt uneasy. One of them, a blunt senior aide named Victor Dunning, approached him in the Oval Office. Mr. President, he said quietly, if Obama takes this challenge, it could backfire. He's measured. He's sharp. People like him when he stays calm. Trump waved him off. Victor, people love me when I win. That's what this is, winning. Everyone will see who's smarter. Or, Victor replied carefully, they'll see who's louder. Trump didn't respond. He stared out the window at reporters still gathered on the lawn. He won't do it, he finally said. He's all talk. That's why I'm president and he's not. But he underestimated something, Obama's ability to surprise without ever raising his voice. That evening, in a quiet home office in Martha's Vineyard, Barack Obama sat at his desk scrolling through headlines. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Michelle leaned on the doorframe. Let me guess, she said. You've gone viral again. He looked up, smiling. Apparently I've been challenged to a duel of wits. With who this time? She teased. Trump, he said. IQ test. Michelle rolled her eyes. You're not actually thinking about responding, are you? He paused, thoughtful. Maybe. But not how he expects. Obama understood something Trump didn't, how to turn noise into clarity. He didn't rush to social media. He didn't call a press conference. He waited. He let the chaos grow. Every pundit, every meme, every late-night punchline added to the anticipation. The world was waiting for his move. Meanwhile, the public tone began shifting. At first, people thought Trump's challenge was amusing. But overnight, editorials questioned whether a sitting president should be challenging a predecessor to an IQ test. Others mocked it as playground politics. Even some of Trump's supporters felt uneasy. I love the guy, said one caller on a Florida radio show, but why does he need to prove anything to Obama? Just do your job. Still, Trump thrived on the controversy. He loved the headlines. To him, there was no such thing as bad press, but the next morning would sting. Obama was scheduled to speak at a virtual education summit hosted by Stanford University, a non-political event about learning and innovation. Most assumed he would ignore Trump's comments completely that he didn't. As soon as Obama took the virtual stage, the moderator mentioned the viral challenge with a smirk. Obama chuckled, paused, then leaned closer to the camera. "Well," he said, "if the president wants to measure intelligence, I'm happy to help. But maybe we do it the right way, live, transparent, moderated by actual experts. That seems fair." The audience laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine admiration. Obama's calm confidence sliced through the noise. It wasn't defensive. It was graceful. Trump's team watched from the West Wing. Victor exhaled. He accepted, he muttered. Trump leaned back, the smirk fading for the first time. "Good," he said. "Let's see if he can keep up." But even he knew this was no longer a simple media stunt. This was pride versus composure, noise versus intellect, and what came next proved that sometimes the calmest man in the room creates the loudest silence. Within minutes of Obama's response, the internet erupted. Twitter feeds flooded with clips. TikTok users edited his calm smile into cinematic montages. YouTube compilations appeared titled "Obama outsmarts Trump in 10 seconds flat." The hashtag IQgate took over the trending list, climbing past celebrity gossip and world news. Late-night hosts couldn't resist. By evening, clips of Obama saying, "Let's do it live," with experts, were being stitched beside Trump's boastful, "Nobody has a higher IQ than me." The contrast spoke for itself. Point one calm and precise. The other loud and defensive, but the most telling reactions came from ordinary people, at home, at work, in classrooms across the country. Everyone had an opinion. In Phoenix. In Phoenix, a teacher named Ronald Keaton played Obama's clip for his students during lunch. "That's composure," he told them. "Confidence without shouting." His students laughed, and one whispered, "Obama just owned him," politely. In Miami, a group of retirees argued about it in a cafe. "Trump picked the wrong fight this time," one woman said. Another replied, "He always does. He just never realizes it until it's too late." Even commentators who usually avoided taking sides started chiming in. On one cable network, a conservative strategist named Linda Travers shook her head and said, "The president's turning this into a circus. Obama's playing chess while Trump's busy flipping the board." Meanwhile, Trump watched everything from the residence, flipping through channels. Every pundit, every segment, every headline carried Obama's words, not his. That irritated him more than anything. He wanted to control the narrative, but somehow the story had slipped away. He grabbed his phone and opened Truth Social. His thumbs flew across the screen. Obama's response was weak. "Everyone knows he's scared of a real test. I'd score perfect marks." Perfect. Within minutes, the post was everywhere. Supporters jumped in to defend him. "He's the smartest president in history," one wrote. "Obama's afraid," another added. Someone else shot back, "Afraid of what? A spelling test?" Even his media allies were split. Some tried to back him, calling the whole thing harmless fun. Others quietly stepped back. They'd seen this pattern before, Trump making a bold claim, only for it to turn into a joke the next day. Later that evening, Fox News ran a segment titled IQ Challenge, "Who Really Wins?" It wasn't flattering. A guest psychologist explained that IQ tests weren't about power or dominance, they measured reasoning and comprehension. "Confidence can't substitute logic," she said simply. In the West Wing, Trump's advisors gathered again, the room thick with tension. Victor Dunning stood by the TV, arms crossed. "It's getting out of hand," he said. "You wanted attention. Now it's a firestorm." Trump waved him off. "People love it. Ratings through the roof." "Ratings don't fix credibility," Victor replied carefully. Trump leaned forward. "You think I care about credibility? I care about winning." Victor hesitated. "Then you might want to figure out how to win this without losing face." But Trump wasn't listening anymore. His phone buzzed, a notification from CNN. The headline flashed, Obama accepts Trump's IQ challenge, experts offer to moderate. For the first time, Trump's smirk flickered. He knew exactly what that meant. Obama wasn't backing down. He was setting the terms. That night, inside his Martha's Vineyard home, Obama sat quietly in front of a laptop reviewing emails from Stanford faculty. Several cognitive researchers had volunteered to design a fair, televised reasoning test. He read their proposals with calm interest. Michelle walked in, holding a mug of tea. "You're really going to do it?" she asked. That he looked up, thoughtful. "Not for him. For the principal. You don't let someone rewrite what intelligence means." She smiled. "You always did love a good teaching moment." The next morning, the world woke up to chaos. Every news outlet led with the same headline, Obama accepts, test to be live in Los Angeles. On one morning show, a co-host gasped as the announcement rolled across the screen. "He's actually doing it," she said, laughing in disbelief. "This is history." Her co-host shook his head. "Not history yet. But it's definitely must-watch TV." Across social platforms, people started placing bets on outcomes. Memes flooded the internet, side-by-side shots of Trump and Obama labeled, brains versus bravado, or, the test of the century. One viral edit showed Obama calmly entering a conference room while dramatic music played and the words 31 seconds later, flashed across the screen. Even international media joined in. The BBC called it, a clash of intellect and ego. French outlets dubbed it le duel du siècle, but in Washington, it was anything but entertaining for Trump's inner circle. Staff whispered about approval ratings. Some urged him to bow out, arguing that the presidency shouldn't be dragged into a televised IQ contest. Others insisted it was too late, backing out now would look worse. Trump paced in the Oval Office, tapping his fingers on the desk. "He thinks he can beat me," he muttered. "We'll see." Meanwhile, Obama's team prepared quietly, almost without leaks. Their approach was calm, methodical, deliberate. No chest thumping. No taunts. Just quiet confidence. His communications director released a short statement. President Obama appreciates the opportunity for a constructive public discussion on cognitive reasoning and leadership. The contrast could not have been sharper. By nightfall, the country was on edge. Cable channels ran countdowns to the event. Trump versus Obama, IQ test tomorrow night at 8 p.m. flashed across screens, but beneath the hype, something deeper was shifting. What started as showmanship was turning into a test of character, and Obama's calm confidence wasn't the only surprise. The preparation behind it would change everything. The morning of the summit felt different. No chaos. No frantic energy. Instead, Obama's team moved with surgical precision, quiet, focused, ready. The online education summit hosted by Stanford had already been trending, but now it had the world's attention. What was supposed to be a routine discussion about learning and innovation had transformed into the most anticipated live stream of the year. Inside a modern conference room overlooking the Massachusetts coast, cameras were being adjusted and microphones tested. Obama arrived a few minutes early, dressed in a simple navy suit. No entourage. No theatrics. He greeted the crew with that familiar, easy warmth. "Morning, folks. Let's keep it simple today," he said, flashing the kind of smile that instantly put people at ease. The moderator, Dr. Helen Strauss, leaned in and whispered, "I have to ask, are you really going to mention the IQ thing?" Obama chuckled softly. "I think the audience already has." When the broadcast went live, viewers flooded in, teachers, parents, students, diplomats. The chat scrolled so fast no one could keep up. Comments like "he's actually here and is he going to say something about Trump?" filled the screen. For the first 20 minutes, everything flowed smoothly. Obama spoke about curiosity, learning, and how education builds bridges across generations. His tone was steady and reflective, carrying that signature calm that always seemed to anchor the room. Then came the moment millions were waiting for. Dr. Strauss smiled. "President Obama, before we close, there's something trending online. I think you know what I'm referring to." Obama grinned. "I might have seen a few headlines." She continued, "The current president publicly challenged you to an IQ test. Do you have any comment?" The air shifted. Obama paused, looked directly into the camera, and spoke with measured grace. "Well, if the president wants to measure intelligence, I think that's fine. But maybe we do it the right way, live, transparent, moderated by experts, and focused on reasoning, not rhetoric." Light laughter filled the room, not mockery, but admiration that he wasn't throwing jabs. He was setting a tone. A tone that said, "We can have fun with this, but we're going to do it with class." That he leaned forward slightly, hands clasped. "The truth is, intelligence isn't about who talks the loudest or who boasts the biggest. It's about how you think under pressure, how you listen, how you learn, and how you treat people who disagree with you. That's real intelligence." The line hit like a quiet thunderclap. Within seconds, it was clipped, captioned, and everywhere. "How you think under pressure" became the phrase of the day. Teachers tweeted it. Journalists quoted it. Even a few politicians reshared it with subtle approval. Meanwhile in Washington, Trump sat watching from the residence, arms crossed, a frown deepening. His aides exchanged uneasy glances. "He's doing it again," Victor Dunning muttered. "He's turning this into something meaningful." Trump didn't answer. His eyes stayed locked on the screen. Then Obama added, "I'll accept the challenge. But let's make it productive. Let's have a discussion about problem solving, reasoning, comprehension, decision making. No tricks. No gotchas. Just real thinking." The chat exploded. No one expected Obama to accept, and certainly not like this. "So a live test moderated by experts?" Dr. Strauss asked. Obama nodded. "If that's what he wants, then let's do it. The public can judge for themselves. Transparency is a good thing." That sentence, "the public can judge for themselves," was the moment everything shifted. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't anger. It was quiet control. By the time the live stream ended, clips were already dominating the internet. CNN called it Obama's cool counter. MSNBC labeled it grace under fire. Even Fox News ran the headline, "Obama accepts Trump's IQ challenge, on his own terms." That night, talk shows broke down every frame, his smile, his timing, his composure. One host joked, "You could practically hear Trump's blood pressure spike," and the audience roared. Back in D.C., Trump called an emergency meeting with his communications team. "We're doing it," he announced, pacing behind the Resolute desk. "Get me the best test, the best moderators. Make it live. We'll show them who's smarter." Victor sighed. "Sir, maybe you should." "No maybes," Trump snapped. "Schedule it. I want everyone watching." As the team scrambled to plan, Victor couldn't help thinking about Obama's approach, calm, thoughtful, deliberate. He'd seen it during the campaign years. That quiet confidence that disarmed even critics. "He knows what he's doing," Victor muttered. Across the country, people were glued to their screens. Comment sections erupted into debates about what intelligence truly meant: book smarts, emotional awareness, leadership. Everyone had something to say. By sunrise, a date was set, Saturday 8 p.m. Eastern, live from the National Press Club in Washington, D.C. 2 President's .1 stage. No teleprompters. The announcement practically froze the internet. News networks cleared their evening schedules. Online shops began selling shirts with slogans like "I'm with Obama" and "Trump 200 IQ Club." But beneath the memes and the noise, something had shifted. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It had become something bigger. It wasn't just a test anymore. It was contrast. The world was about to witness two entirely different kinds of intelligence collide. Obama spent the evening with his daughters, laughing and sharing takeout. When one of them asked if he was nervous, he smiled and said, "No. You don't get nervous when you already know who you are." But the next phase, the preparation for the test itself, would push both men further than either expected. The announcement of the live IQ test hit the world like a thunderclap. Within an hour, every major network cut to breaking news. The ticker at the bottom of screens everywhere read, Obama versus Trump, IQ test live Saturday. The National Press Club in Washington had never seen anything like it. Reporters began camping outside days early. Barricades went up. Staff whispered that it felt less like a test and more like a heavyweight fight, intellect versus instinct. Inside the White House, tension hummed like static. Trump's inner circle worked around the clock to give him every possible advantage. Consultants claiming expertise in cognitive testing were brought in. Charts, diagrams, and mock questions covered the conference table. Make sure they know I'm ready, Trump boomed as he strode into the room, tie loosened. I want the toughest questions, logic, math, memory, all of it. People need to see how fast my brain works. Victor Dunning traded a wary look with another aide. Sir, that's exactly what they're going to see, he said gently. We're just trying to ensure the format is fair. Trump leaned forward, lowering his voice. Fair is fine. Losing isn't. Across the country, Obama's preparation looked nothing like Trump's. No rehearsals. No panels of advisors. Just a quiet evening in his home office, a notepad, and a small team of academic volunteers working remotely from Stanford. Dr. Helen Strauss, who had moderated his summit appearance, helped coordinate the testing format with independent experts. The goal is transparency, she said during a video call. No politics. Just reasoning and analysis. That's all I need, Obama replied, jotting notes. Michelle entered carrying a folder. You know, you could ignore all this, she said softly. You don't have anything to prove. I know, he said. But sometimes silence gets mistaken for weakness. I just want to show people that calm doesn't mean complacent. That night, while the world argued online, Obama quietly reread old notes from his law school days, pages filled with logical puzzles and philosophical exercises. He wasn't preparing to win. He was preparing to teach. Back in Washington, networks scrambled for exclusive broadcast rights. CNN wanted the feed. Fox wanted the feed. NBC eventually secured it, with the others sharing syndication. A three-person panel was confirmed: Dr. Strauss, Dr. Raymond Chen of MIT, and Professor Linda Bauer, a cognitive scientist from Berkeley. They agreed to only one condition: total neutrality. Trump's team hated it. We need someone friendly in there, an advisor complained. Someone who won't embarrass him if things get heated. Victor cut in. That's the problem. If we control it, it looks rigged. He needs credibility. Trump waved him off. What I need is victory. Big, beautiful victory. In the days leading up to the test, the city transformed. Posters showing caricatures of the two presidents as boxers appeared outside coffee shops. Late-night hosts aired spoof training montages of actors pretending to cram for IQ exams. The whole event took on an almost surreal energy, part comedy, part thriller, but behind the humor, something deeper brewed. Americans began talking about ego. About leadership. About what intelligence really meant. Parents debated it with their children. College students streamed discussion panels on Twitch. Psychologists wrote op-eds about IQ and emotional intelligence, and through all of it, Obama's tone, calm, measured, deliberate, continued winning people over. The day before the event, both men made brief statements. Trump's was pure Trump, bold, loud, and dripping with self-assurance. I'm looking forward to showing everyone how smart I am, he told reporters. Nobody knows more about IQ than me. Obama's was understated. I think it'll be an interesting discussion, he said with a small smile as he left a cafe in Martha's Vineyard. It's good for people to see that intellect doesn't have to divide us. It can remind us that we're always learning. The difference in tone was striking. Even some of Trump's loyal supporters admitted privately that Obama sounded presidential in a way that was difficult to ignore. That evening, rehearsal lights illuminated the National Press Club. Technicians adjusted microphones, calibrated timers, and synced cameras. In a private room, the moderators reviewed the final questions. Each question tests reasoning, Professor Bauer explained. Not memorization. This isn't trivia. It's about how they think under pressure. At 8 o'clock, the moderators ran one final practice round. Sample questions. 30 seconds per problem. Just enough time to think, but short enough to keep the audience holding their breath. Outside, crowds gathered. Some held signs reading brains over bluster. Others wore red hats that said genius tested. Vendors sold popcorn and t-shirts. The world was ready. The whole city felt like it was holding its breath. In a quiet hotel room just blocks from the venue, Obama reviewed the test structure one final time. Dr. Strauss appeared on his screen, her tone calm and reassuring. We'll keep everything fair. It's all logic and analysis. Obama smiled gently. I'm not worried about doing fine. I'm worried about what this moment says about us. He set his pen down. Two presidents needing a test to prove who's smart. She paused, then nodded. Maybe that's exactly why you're doing it. Across town, in a suite crowded with aides, Trump stood before a mirror practicing his expressions. Strong face, he muttered. Confident. No hesitation. One of his staffers leaned in and whispered, Sir, people will be watching your reactions too. I know, Trump snapped back. And they'll love what they see. As the final night before the broadcast came to an end, the two men prepared in completely different ways, one through stillness, the other through showmanship, and somewhere between those extremes, the entire nation waited to see what would happen when calm intellect met raw ego, live, unfiltered, unforgettable. But when the cameras finally started rolling the next evening, not even the moderators could predict what those first moments would bring. Saturday night in Washington, D.C., wasn't charged with protests or rallies. It was charged with anticipation. Outside the National Press Club, the streets were packed with camera crews, flashing lights, and people waving handmade signs. Some signs were playful, may the best brain win. Others were bold, intelligence over ego. No matter where you stood politically, you could feel it. Something unusual and historic was about to unfold. Inside, security was tight. Metal detectors lined the entrance, reporters whispered into live microphones, their voices echoing against marble walls. One journalist from Reuters captured the mood perfectly. It feels like the Super Bowl, except the trophy is bragging rights. In a quiet holding room backstage, Barack Obama sat with a cup of tea, calmly scrolling through the moderator notes. His longtime aide Miles Turner watched him from across the room. You know, Miles said, most people in your position would be sweating bullets right now. Obama smiled. That's because most people forget, it's just a conversation with questions. You think he'll play fair? Miles asked. I think he'll play loud, Obama replied softly, setting his phone aside. Across the hall, the atmosphere couldn't have been more different. Trump's room buzzed with energy, cameras everywhere, makeup artists adjusting his tie, staffers reviewing talking points that had nothing to do with the test. An assistant nervously practiced introductions. Trump paced in front of the mirror, muttering, stay focused. Be confident. People love a winner. Victor Dunning stood by the door, arms crossed. Mr. President, it's important to stay calm. If they praise Obama, it'll look better on camera if you seem gracious. Trump shot him a sharp glare. Gracious doesn't win ratings. Dominance does. Minutes before broadcast, the stage was ready, two desks under soft lights facing each other like duelists. Between them sat the moderator's table, equipped with tablets, microphones, and a digital timer. The broadcast opened with NBC anchor Dana Hollis addressing the camera. Good evening, America. Tonight, for the first time in history, a sitting president and a former president will participate in a live cognitive reasoning test moderated by independent experts. The format is simple, she continued. Timed logic, pattern recognition, and comprehension challenges. Each answer will be scored instantly by our panel. The camera panned to the audience, journalists, students, invited guests. A tense, collective heartbeat pulsed through the room. Then the announcer's voice boomed. Please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama. They emerged from opposite sides of the stage, and the contrast was striking. Trump walked with his familiar swagger, waving, smiling, mouthing, "Thank you," to the crowd. Obama entered quietly, offering a small wave, his calm presence commanding attention without effort. They met at center stage, shook hands, polite, distant. "Mr. President." "Mr. President," Dana greeted them both. "Thank you for agreeing to participate." Trump leaned toward his microphone. "It's great to be here. And I'm hearing the ratings tonight are already through the roof." Obama let out a soft chuckle. "I'm just glad people are tuning into something that doesn't involve shouting." Laughter rippled through the audience, briefly easing the tension. Dr. Strauss, seated at the moderator table, spoke next. "Gentlemen, thank you. This will be a timed assessment of reasoning and logic. No trick questions. All responses recorded live." Trump nodded with confidence. "Sounds easy." Obama smiled faintly. "We'll see," he said as the first question appeared on the screen behind them. "A train leaves Chicago traveling 60 miles per hour. Another leaves Dallas traveling 80 miles per hour toward Chicago. Where do they meet?" Trump grabbed his marker and began scribbling across the pad, muttering calculations under his breath. He started to subtract and divide, stalling for the rest of the data. "What was the distance again?" he asked. Obama, calm and methodical, worked it through aloud, assuming equal starting times. "The meeting point depends on distance covered, not just speed. If the distance is 800 miles, they would meet at roughly 343 miles from Chicago." Dr. Chen pressed the button. "Correct," he announced, and polite applause rippled through the audience. Trump looked up, confused. "Wait," he began. "We didn't get the full data. That's not fair." Dr. Strauss smiled politely. "All participants received the same information," she said. Trump muttered something about bad math, but the cameras caught the irritation flitting across his face. The next set of questions moved quickly: pattern sequences, logic grids, visual puzzles. Obama stayed composed, answering methodically. Trump, by contrast, talked his way through each step, loudly narrating his thought process and often interrupting the moderators. At one point, Dr. Bauer gently reminded him to hold commentary until he offered a final answer. "Please refrain from commentary until your final answer," she requested. Trump sighed. "Fine. But people like to hear how I think. That's why I'm here." Obama kept his head down and continued solving quietly. In the control room, producers exchanged looks. One whispered, "This is gold." By the fifth question, the difference in energy was plain. Obama's focus was surgical, his confidence quietly assured. Trump's intensity edged toward restlessness. He shifted in his seat, tapped his pen, and glanced at the crowd for reassurance. The moderators called a brief break. The audience buzzed. Cameras zoomed in. Obama took a careful sip of water while Trump adjusted his microphone. "Feeling good?" Obama asked lightly, turning toward his counterpart. Trump offered a smirk. "I always feel good. Winning feels good. Let's see who's winning after the next round." Obama replied with a relaxed grin, and the timer reset. The second round began, and within the next 31 seconds something happened that no one in the room, not even the moderators, had been ready for. The timer beeped softly and the screen lit up with a logic puzzle to start the segment. Dr. Strauss read it aloud. "If every rose is a flower, and some flowers fade quickly, can we logically conclude that some roses fade quickly?" It was the kind of question built to test reasoning, not memory, one that required thinking through assumptions and scope. Obama leaned forward, pen poised, eyes fixed on the screen. Trump leaned back, marker tapping against the desk, lips pursed. "No," Obama said calmly. "The statement doesn't specify that roses are among the flowers that fade quickly. It's a matter of scope, not assumption." Dr. Bauer nodded. "Correct." Polite applause rose again. Trump looked annoyed, then offered a half-smile. "You see," he said to the moderators, "I was going to say that too, but I wanted to let him go first. You know, I like to give people chances." A few people in the audience laughed, the sound edged with awkwardness. Obama smiled courteously but stayed silent. the next puzzle was a numerical pattern. Trump's hand shot up before the full question had even been read. "I've got it already," he declared. "Easy." Dr. Chen glanced up. "You may answer, Mr. President." Trump rattled off an example pattern from memory before the question revealed itself, confident he'd nailed it, when the screen scrolled to the actual series. 3, 9, 27, Obama glanced toward Trump and said gently, "It's 81. Dr. Bauer confirmed it. Trump frowned. "Well, it's basically the same thing. Same concept. Everybody knows I'm great with numbers." "Of course," Obama replied, tone neutral. "We're all learning as we go." The comment wasn't overtly sarcastic, but the crowd caught the subtle humor. A ripple of laughter moved through the room. Even some of Trump's staff watching backstage smiled with discomfort. The third question was a visual reasoning puzzle. Abstract shapes in a grid required selecting the next pattern. Both men used tablets to submit answers. Trump scanned the image, tilting his head. "Too easy," he muttered. "You just match the triangles with the circles." "Done." He tapped his answer and looked satisfied. Obama waited a few more seconds, tracing invisible lines in the air, then tapped his selection. The result flashed, Obama correct. Trump incorrect. Dr. Chen explained calmly, it wasn't about matching shapes. It was about rotational symmetry. Each shape rotates 90 degrees between panels. Rotational what now? Symmetry. Trump repeated, half amused. Chen repeated the point plainly. Trump laughed it off, 90 degrees, great, I knew that. The moderators tried to move on, but something in the room had palpably shifted. Obama wasn't showing off, he didn't need to. His steady rhythm, measured patience, and clear explanations were widening the gap with every answer. By the time the fourth puzzle arrived, a classic logic riddle, the energy had changed entirely. The riddle went like this: a farmer has 17 sheep. All but 9 run away. How many are left? Trump grinned. That's easy, 8, he said without hesitation. Obama, still writing, said softly, 9. Dr. Bauer smiled. That's correct. Trump blinked, startled. Wait, what? The question says, all but 9, right? Obama looked up at the moment and answered simply, so 9 stayed. A ripple of laughter swept the room. Even Dr. Strauss cracked a smile. Trump's face flushed, color deepening. Okay, he said, raising a hand. Cute question. I like real questions, not tricks. Dr. Bauer replied evenly, all the questions are drawn from standardized reasoning tests, sir. For the first time, Trump fell silent. He sat back with his arms crossed. As the next round began, something subtle but powerful unfolded. Obama started explaining his reasoning aloud, not to boast, but to show how he thought. When you slow down, he said during one problem, the implication clear that clarity and patience were part of the skill being tested. You realize most problems hide simple patterns in plain sight. People leaned in, even through the screen, viewers at home could feel it, the professor in him was taking over. It didn't feel like politics anymore. It felt like watching pure intellect at work. Trump tried to interrupt. You know, I'm a fast thinker. I don't need to slow down. That's how I've built everything, quick decisions. Obama smiled lightly, quick's good when you're sure. But accuracy matters too. That line landed. It was like a real-time checkmate. On social media, clips spread instantly. Quick's good when you're sure, turned into a quote trending across the world. News anchors replayed it between segments. Commentators called it the calmest clapback in political history. Trump, noticing the shift in the room, grew restless. He interrupted more, made jokes. Looked toward the audience as if trying to pull energy from their reactions, but the more he spoke, the clearer it became, this wasn't his arena. Obama, meanwhile, seemed untouched by the noise. Every question, every answer, he handled with the same steady rhythm. No rushing, no boasting, no defensiveness, just focused. As they approached the halfway point, the moderators introduced the next challenge, advanced pattern recognition. Dr. Strauss looked up and announced the prompt, identify the next symbol in the sequence. A series of intricate diagrams filled the screen, something that looked like it belonged on a graduate-level logic exam. Obama studied it once, then twice. His pen moved. It's option C, he said. Doctor Bauer smiled. Correct. Trump leaned forward. Wait, how? That was too fast. Obama leaned back slightly. Sometimes the pattern's clearer when you stop looking for shortcuts. The room paused for a heartbeat, then applause broke out. Trump forced a smile, though his voice tightened. You know, people tell me I have a photographic memory. I just don't waste it on meaningless shapes. The moderator said nothing, but the moment had already slipped away. The contrast between the two men had crystallized. Obama was calm precision, Trump was restless energy, and the real test, the one no one would forget, was still ahead. The 31-second question. The air in the room changed. Even through TV screens, people felt it, the quiet before something big. Doctor Strauss adjusted her glasses and leaned into the microphone. We'll now move to the final problem of the round. This one tests analytical reasoning and applied logic. The new question appeared on the screen, not numbers, not patterns. A word puzzle, deceptively simple on the surface, but layered. A family has 3 daughters. Each daughter has one brother. How many children are in the family? The timer started. Trump grabbed his pen, muttering to himself, 3 daughters, 1 brother each, that's 3 brothers, 3 sisters, 6. 6 total. He wrote the number in big, bold strokes, nodding confidently. Obama didn't move at first as he watched the timer, then looked down. You could almost see the thought settle behind his eyes. Calm, methodical, efficient. He whispered softly, each daughter has 1 brother, same brother. A small smile. He wrote his answer. He looked up. 4. Dr. Bauer tapped the evaluation key. The green light blinked. Correct. For a moment, the room froze, that quiet that comes when a crowd realizes they've just witnessed something subtle but sharp. Then applause rose, polite at first, then growing, longer, warmer. Dr. Strauss looked genuinely impressed. Excellent reasoning. You identified the relational assumption. Obama nodded, as if it were nothing special. Sometimes you just have to read what's actually there, he said, not what you expect to see. Trump's head snapped toward him. What's that supposed to mean? Obama kept smiling. It means we sometimes make things complicated when they're simple. The audience laughed, not mockingly, but with the kind of relief and admiration that comes from watching something unexpectedly sharp unfold. Trump forced a grin, though his tone hardened. Well, I got it wrong on purpose. I wanted to show people how tricky these questions are. It's about exposing flaws, not playing teacher. Dr. Chen gently interjected. The goal is reasoning accuracy, sir. Exactly, Trump replied quickly, as if that had been his point all along, but even his supporters could feel the shift. That 31-second moment had changed everything. Obama hadn't just gotten it right, that he did it with such poise that Trump's bluster suddenly felt small. Inside the control room, a producer whispered, that's it. That's the moment. Another said, run the replay. Make sure they see the timer. Seconds later, the broadcast replayed the sequence side by side, the clock counting down, Obama writing his answer with time to spare, while Trump filled his notepad with crossed-out guesses. Commentators would later call it 31-second lesson. Across the country, living rooms fell quiet. People weren't cheering, they were processing. Parents explained the logic to their kids, teenagers posted clips captioned. Obama ends the test in barely half a minute, and even Trump's closest allies struggled to spin it. On one conservative panel, a commentator tried to soften the blow. Well, IQ tests don't really prove anything. Another immediately fired back, then why challenge someone to one on live television? At the venue, the moderators moved to wrap up the round, but the energy in the room had completely shifted. Obama sat comfortably, leaning back with his hands folded. Trump shifted in his chair, jaw tight, eyes bouncing between his notes and the audience. Dr. Strauss offered both men a polite smile. We'll now move to analysis and reflection. Obama nodded, relaxed. Trump jumped in before she could continue. Before we go on, I just want to say this was fun, but it's a little biased. Everyone knows that. Biased how? Dr. Bauer asked gently. Well, they're like trick questions. Not real-world questions. I solve real-world problems, business, politics, deals. Obama looked up from his notepad. Problem solving is problem solving, Mr. President. It doesn't really change based on the setting. A ripple of approval passed through the audience. Trump laughed, too loudly to sound natural. You'd think I'd be used to hostile environments by now. Obama raised his eyebrows, still composed. I think people just want honesty, that's all. For the first time that evening, Trump fell quiet. That he glanced at the audience, then at the cameras. The moderators resumed. That concludes the round, Dr. Strauss said. Scores will be tallied and displayed shortly. The results lit up on the large screen. Obama, almost perfect. Trump, less than half correct. Applause swelled, restrained, respectful, but undeniable. Obama gave a modest nod. Trump stared at the screen, expression unreadable. In that silence, something passed between them, not hostility, recognition. They both knew what had just happened. Obama leaned over slightly and said softly, "You know, intelligence isn't about competition. It's about curiosity." Trump didn't respond. That he stared straight ahead, pen gripped tightly. The moderators thanked both presidents, and the broadcast shifted toward post-test commentary. Reporters typed frantically in the press section, already drafting headlines. Obama outsmarts Trump in 31 seconds. Grace versus bravado, the IQ showdown. But the story wasn't over. Trump wasn't the type to walk away quietly. As cameras kept rolling for post-event interviews, his team huddled backstage, scrambling for damage control. Victor Dunning spoke first. "Sir, maybe we frame this as entertainment, not competition. You were showing leadership by participating." Trump shook his head. "No. We fight this. People need to know it was rigged." Obama, meanwhile, stood outside the stage area greeting moderators, shaking hands, smiling modestly. A reporter asked how he felt about the outcome. He simply said, "It's not about who's smarter. It's about how we use what we know to make things better." That line went viral, not because it was clever, but because it felt true. But the backlash, especially from Trump's camp, would turn this single test into something far larger than anyone expected. The moment the results hit the screen, the internet exploded. Comment sections, newsrooms, and group chats all lit up with disbelief. Networks immediately cut to live analysis. Anchors struggling to understand what they had just watched. Inside the National Press Club, the moderator stood to thank both presidents, but the applause was still echoing from the scoreboard reveal. Obama rose calmly, buttoned his jacket, and extended his hand toward Trump. "Good game," he said quietly. Trump hesitated for a beat before taking it. "Yeah, great show," he muttered, stiff and unreadable. The camera zoomed in on the handshake, a freeze frame that would appear on front pages around the world by morning. Obama, calm, faint smile. Trump, rigid, jaw tight. As the broadcast transitioned to the commentary segments, both men were escorted to separate rooms for interviews. The contrast between them couldn't have been sharper. In a smaller studio, Obama sat relaxed, hands folded. NBC anchor Dana Hollis began, "People are calling this the 31-second lesson. How do you feel about tonight?" Obama smiled modestly. "I think it went the way it should. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about showing people that intelligence isn't loud, it's thoughtful." Hollis nodded. "Some say you made it look effortless." "I've had practice staying calm under pressure," Obama said. "That's all this really was, a reminder that leadership is about composure." In the next room over, Trump's setup was chaotic. Staff whispered nervously, adjusting lights. Trump sat stiffly, jaw clenched. Fox host Dan Richards began sympathetically, "Mr. President, some critics say tonight was a clear win for Obama. What's your response?" Trump leaned forward. "First of all, that test was unfair. They picked confusing questions, not intelligence questions. Everyone knows I'm one of the smartest people on the planet. Ask the generals, the business leaders. They'll tell you. So you don't think it was fair?" Richards asked gently. "Not at all," Trump insisted. "It was biased. I could design a better one in an hour. A real-world test, not riddles about trains and sheep." Behind the scenes, Victor Dunning rubbed his temples. He recognized that tone, the defensive deflection that always made everything worse. "We should pivot," he whispered to another aide. He was digging in deeper. Obama's interview wrapped up smoothly. and as he stepped out of the building reporters called after him, asking for his thoughts on Trump's reaction that he paused, turned slightly, and said, "I think the American people saw what they needed to see." Then he slipped into his car and disappeared into the D.C. night. Inside, Trump wasn't ready to leave. His team scrambled to shape a story around the night. "We frame it as entertainment," Victor insisted. "You volunteered. You showed confidence. We spin it as confidence." Trump shook his head sharply. "No. We call it rigged. I know those moderators, never neutral." By the time he finally walked out, social media had already locked in its verdict. Clips of the final question flooded every corner of the internet. TikTok users set the footage to dramatic music. YouTube creators slowed everything down, highlighting Obama's quiet focus opposite Trump's frantic scribbling. Hashtags exploded. "Obama wins, IQgate." Even foreign officials joined the conversation. A European minister posted a short message, "Reason beats rhetoric." It spread instantly. Late-night comedy seized the moment. Jimmy Kimmel replayed the family riddle over and over before joking. That question didn't just stump Trump, it's the exact moment he realized the test wasn't a game. The audience roared, but not everyone was laughing. In conservative circles, outrage was brewing. Pundits accused the moderators of stacking the deck. "It was elitism at its finest," one Fox commentator said, "intellectual showboating." Others took a different angle. "He challenged a man known for his intellect," another pointed out. "He set the stage, and walked straight into it." At the White House, the communications team worked frantically. Side-by-side images of Trump's tense expression and Obama's half-smile went viral. Captions were merciless, "The face of overconfidence meeting reality." In the private residence, Trump sat switching between networks, watching replay after replay. Every station slowed the moment down, the calm fourth versus the loud six. His jaw clenched as he slammed the remote. "Enough. Get me on camera tomorrow. I'll explain it." Victor exhaled heavily. "Sir. I think people might be ready to move on." "Exactly," Trump shot back, "that's why I won't let them. We control the story." Meanwhile, in Chicago, Obama called Dr. Strauss to thank her for moderating. "You handled it well," he said. "So did you," she replied. "That moment? People will study it for years." Obama laughed. "I just read carefully." By morning, every major newspaper ran a variation of the same headline, "Calm versus Chaos." Obama outsmarts Trump. A lesson in leadership. But the most meaningful reactions came from regular people. A truck driver in Kansas told a local reporter, "I don't care about politics. I just liked seeing someone stay calm when the other guy didn't." The story had grown beyond the test. It had become a window into character, pride versus patience, volume versus intellect. The next day in the West Wing, Trump's advisors tried to redirect him, but he kept circling back. "They won't be laughing for long," he muttered. "We'll do another event. Something big. Something huge." Victor looked exhausted. "Sir, sometimes the best win is walking away." Trump frowned. "Winners don't walk away." But to millions watching, the verdict already felt settled. The test had never been about raw intelligence. It was about who handled the moment with dignity, and in that brief window of silence, one man writing calmly while the other defended his mistake, the difference had become unmistakable. As the media storm escalated and the world debated the meaning of that night, what unfolded in the following days would turn a simple televised challenge into a political earthquake. By sunrise, the world had taken its sides. Cable news anchors replayed Obama's quiet answer repeatedly, the now legendary 31-second moment. Social media dissected every expression, every hesitation, every breath. People said it so often it became a cultural punchline. He answered it in 31 seconds. Memes swept across platforms, used to describe moments of poetic justice, small triumphs, or quiet comebacks. Across breakfast tables nationwide, families talked about it. In a St. Louis diner, two older men watched the footage in silence before one finally said, "That's the difference between confidence and wisdom." The other nodded. One talks. The other thinks. In Los Angeles, a college professor opened her class with the clip, "This," she said, "is how composure dismantles chaos." Her students laughed, but they leaned in. They recognized the contrast. Obama's steady reasoning versus Trump's rushed defense. It had become more than a spectacle. It was now a case study in self-control. By mid-morning, networks rolled out full panel discussions. CNN asked whether this was an IQ test or a power test. MSNBC called it the 31-second reckoning. Even Fox, trying to soften the blow, went with Trump questions test fairness. But online, the verdict held firm. TikTok creators posted cinematic edits of Obama solving logic puzzles. YouTubers slowed footage to analyze the exact moment Trump's confidence cracked. On Reddit, a top post read, 31 seconds of silence louder than 4 years of shouting. International media piled on. In London, an article called it, a public masterclass in calm intellect. Germany's Der Spiegel ran a headline that translated to Obama outsmarts Trump, and the world watches. French outlets called it simply, "Le silence d'Obama." At the same time, Trump's most loyal defenders doubled down. Conservative talk shows framed the event as elitist theater. One commentator insisted, the media is cheering for an IQ test while regular Americans are working 2 jobs. This isn't about brains, it's about values. But even that argument felt thin. The clip was too striking, too clear to ignore. At a high school in Cleveland, a teacher overheard her students debating it. One said, "Trump's not dumb, he's just fast." Another replied, "No, he's loud. There's a difference." The teacher smiled quietly. For once, politics had become a lesson, not about policy, but about perception. Meanwhile, late-night comedy went all in. Colbert opened with, "If this was a boxing match, Obama won by checkmate." The audience exploded. Saturday Night Live followed with a sketch of Trump trying to change his answer mid-test. "I said 4, you just didn't hear me." The humor was loud, but underneath it was something quieter, a collective sigh of relief. For many Americans, seeing Obama's composure felt like remembering a version of leadership they'd missed. It stopped being partisan. It was about tone, balance, intelligence, and the power of restraint. Behind the cameras, Obama avoided gloating that he declined interviews, turned down appearances, even told his team, "Let's not turn this into a circus." The moment speaks for itself. That humility only strengthened the public's respect. His social account stayed silent, until a single tweet appeared 2 days later. Wisdom isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing when to listen. It became the most liked post of the month. Trump, meanwhile, grew more frustrated. The more he tried to rewrite the story, the more the story reshaped him. He called the test fake, accused the moderators of bias, demanded a recount, but every new complaint only reminded people of the contrast. One man composed, the other combative. Victor Dunning finally pulled him aside in the Oval Office. "Mr. President, people aren't reacting to the score. They're reacting to how you handled it." Trump scowled. "Handled what? I didn't lose anything." Victor sighed. "Sir, sometimes winning isn't about being right. It's about how you carry yourself when you're wrong." Trump waved him off. "I'm never wrong." That one line, overheard by an aide, leaked within hours. It became another headline. Trump, "I'm never wrong." In contrast, Obama's quiet restraint made him appear even stronger. Journalists wrote essays about humility versus ego. One commentator summarized it perfectly, "It wasn't an IQ test. It was a character test." Even conservative insiders began whispering doubts. A longtime GOP strategist admitted off the record, he underestimated Obama. Again. For everyday Americans, the story transformed into a kind of moral tale. Parents told their kids, "That's how you stay calm under pressure." Teachers used the clip to explain logic. Some churches wove it into sermons about patience. It had become something rare, a political event that turned into a cultural parable, and through it all, Obama stayed quiet. He refused victory tours, let the headlines run their course. Disappeared from the spotlight. A journalist finally caught him outside a bookstore in Martha's Vineyard and asked if he had any final thoughts about the test. Obama smiled and said, "Pride makes noise. Intelligence doesn't need to." That clip went viral instantly. The White House tried to drown out the narrative with announcements, rallies, and rapid-fire statements, but the internet wouldn't move on. The meme of the week was a split image, Obama calmly writing, "For," Trump scowling at his mistaken answer. The caption read, "Read the question." What began as a show of bravado ended as a reminder of something older and deeper. Wisdom rarely shouts, and grace under pressure can disarm any storm. But the story didn't end there, because the aftermath, the days that followed, revealed even more about leadership, pride, and the meaning of losing with grace. By the time the dust settled, the test had become more than trending news. It was a cultural marker. Late-night jokes faded, but the footage of Obama's calm answer lived on, in reposts, in classrooms, in coffee shops, in quiet conversations everywhere. It had become shorthand for one thing: quiet confidence. It was the moment when thought triumphed over noise. In the weeks that followed, journalists began calling it the calm herd around the world. Editorials poured in, not about politics, but about pride, intelligence, and what the exchange revealed about human nature. At the National Press Club, staff members joked about framing the test question in the hallway. That was history, one said. No matter how people spin it, something shifted in that room. Inside the White House, though, the atmosphere was anything but light. Trump's team was exhausted. His approval numbers had dipped sharply after the broadcast, and his advisors struggled to redirect attention. They pushed economic wins, trade deals, infrastructure accomplishments, but every press conference still opened with the same question: do you regret challenging Obama? Trump brushed it off every time: no regrets. People loved it. Great entertainment. But the strain showed. His inner circle saw it, the late-night tweets slowing, the speeches losing their trademark bravado, replaced by a new bitterness. Victor Dunning, his longest-serving aide, finally decided to be honest. He waited until the president was alone in the Oval Office. "Sir," he said quietly, "I've been with you through every campaign and every headline. But this hit differently." People didn't laugh at the mistake, they connected with the grace on the other side of it. Trump stared at him. "Grace doesn't win elections." Victor hesitated. "Maybe not. But it earns something you can't buy." For a moment, Trump said nothing. He just turned toward the window and stared at his own reflection in the glass. Meanwhile, in Massachusetts, Obama's life slipped back into its version of normal. He taught a few guest lectures, spent time with his daughters, and rarely mentioned the event. When a university student asked him what he thought of it all, he replied, "If people learned something from it, I'm glad. That's all I ever wanted, for people to remember that knowledge isn't something to weaponize." The applause that followed wasn't the usual polite clapping. It carried weight, sincerity, understanding. Around the country, the moment began to symbolize something far bigger than a political conflict. Teachers used it as a case study in emotional intelligence. Parents turned it into a lesson about staying calm when others lose control. Younger generations saw it as a reminder that confidence isn't volume, it's patience. In one Minneapolis elementary school, a teacher wrote the question on the board. A family has 3 daughters. Each daughter has 1 brother. How many children are in the family? When her students answered, she explained, "The trick isn't math. It's reading carefully, thinking before reacting. Just like life." That's how the story spread, not through politics, but through parable. Months later, when reporters tried to revive the debate, Obama refused to engage. "It was just a test," he told one journalist, "but if it reminded people that thinking clearly matters, I'm fine with that." Trump, however, couldn't let go. In a rally in Ohio, he brought it up again: that test. Total scam. Everybody knows it. They probably had the answers ahead of time. The crowd cheered, but the fire wasn't there anymore. It wasn't excitement, it was fatigue. Afterward, Victor pulled him aside again. "Sir, maybe it's time to move on." Trump narrowed his eyes. "You think I lost?" Victor breathed slowly. "No. I think you forgot why you started the challenge in the first place." For the first time, Trump didn't respond. He just walked away. That same night, pundits replayed his rally while Obama was filmed leaving a quiet bookstore in Martha's Vineyard, a stack of novels in his hand, waving casually to locals. A reporter approached him and asked if he had any final thoughts about the now famous test. Obama smiled faintly. "We all get tested eventually. Not by what we know, but by how we act when the world is watching." The line spread fast, onto posters, classroom walls, social media feeds. People repeated it whenever someone lost control or handled a challenge poorly. How you act when the world is watching. The test had been framed around IQ, but it exposed something much deeper: the contrast between ego and integrity, between pride and patience. And in that contrast, America found a moment of clarity. For all his intellect, Obama's true victory wasn't answering a question in 31 seconds. It was showing that intelligence isn't proven on paper, It's revealed in how one handles pressure, criticism, and grace under fire. Trump's challenge was meant to expose weakness. Instead, it reminded millions that humility is its own kind of power, a quiet power that never needs to announce itself. In the end, the lesson was simple and lasting. Wisdom doesn't argue. It demonstrates, and somewhere beneath the noise of politics and headlines, people remembered what leadership once looked like: composed, thoughtful, unshaken. So the next time someone tries to measure you with their own yardstick, remember this: it's not about how fast you respond or how loudly you speak, but how steady you stay when the clock is ticking. If you believe true strength comes from composure, and that grace speaks louder than ego, make sure to subscribe for more stories like this, because the world still needs reminders that silence, when used wisely, can echo louder than any shout.